Welcome to the Mindful Mommy Podcast. I'm your host, Haley Morris, a stay-at-home mom, wife, homesteader, certified holistic life coach, certified primal blueprint health coach, and activist.
I'm good.
Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mindful Mommy Podcast. With our guest today is Darby Simpson, with the Simpson Family Farm and Simpson Farm Market. And so we are actually going to talk about a little bit about his farming techniques, authentic food, and also to start out with him leaving the corporate world and doing farming full time, which is pretty cool. And so, hey, Darby, how are you doing?
Doing well on this cold November morning.
Yep, we just talked about how your turkey water lines were frozen, so you've had fun dealing with that this morning, and let's jump into farm life. So corporate world, what inspired you leaving the corporate world, and then how did you get into the full-time farming? Can you go through that transition with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was, kind of a crazy thing, to venture out into farming, kind of when I was in my early 30s. I really started getting interested, in farming, and I'd always been interested in farming. I grew up on our family farm, in Martinsville, Indiana, central Indiana. And, when I was about 5 years old, and I started showing a real strong interest in farming, my grandfather actually steered me in a different direction. And, told me that you couldn't make a living in farming anymore and I should go do something else. And, that was roughly 1980. And honestly, at the time, that was pretty sage advice and wisdom because small family farms were going out of business left and right. With just the large corporate takeover on farming that was really gaining a lot of steam and momentum in the 70s and 80s. So I went into engineering and was doing HVAC and plumbing engineering design and project management. That's a pretty fast-paced industry to be in. I mean, there are parts of it that I absolutely love and enjoyed. The problem solving and design aspect of it really kind of made me tick, and I was really good at it. But like everything else in our society, it was becoming bigger, better, faster, cheaper mentality, and projects were more stressful. Timelines got shorter. You were expected to do more with less, and then fast forward to call it 2006, I took my quote-unquote dream job, and by February of 2007, I was ready to just leave engineering entirely. So for me at that point, it was a very prayerful and spiritual decision to go into farming full-time, and I had actually been reading some books from guys like Elliot Coleman. I've always kind of been a vegetable farmer at heart. Not really good at it, but I thought, perhaps when I was a bit older and the kids were gone, I'd start some kind of, farming venture as like a second career or whatever. But that wasn't really, what I felt like God had planned for me. So we actually started with animals in 2007, started with 50 pastured broilers after reading Salatin's book, Pastured Poultry Profits. And that's where we started. About $600 and 50 chickens and 12 friends and family that were, willing to buy a chicken.
Nice. Yeah, we actually, my husband actually started with pasture poultry as well. And exactly the same thing went with Joel Salatin's book, and got the chicken tractors ready and broilers and everything else. And he actually made really good money there for a while, and he's kind of transitioned into something else now. But so you started with like 20 acres, is that right?
Yeah. So by the time I began farming full time, that was in 2010. And let me add that I started farming full time because of the recession. I got laid off actually twice in less than 24 months. The first time I was able to find another job pretty quickly, and I had some flexibility there to actually grow our farming enterprise. I made them aware of what I was doing and attempting to do, and they were pretty gracious about allowing me to do some flex hours and things like that to wedge in some farm activities on certain days. So in 2009, when I was still working full time in engineering, commuting into downtown Indianapolis every day, I jokingly say that in my spare time I raised 2,000 broilers and 20 pigs.
Yeah.
So 2010, I get laid off basically the beginning of April, and there were no engineering jobs to be found, so we just ramped up. And at that time we were using about 20 acres total for everything we were doing, which was about 15 acres of pasture and a few acres of woods for the pigs. And it was a struggle, but we were able to kind of put a plan together and make it work. And since that time we've added more acreage, but certainly with 20 acres, you can provide at least one income.
Yeah, that's awesome. So where were you selling, your chickens and stuff like that at this time?
Well, so initially when I was working off farm, we really focused on just pre-selling. So we just built an email list, and we'd just let people know, like, hey, we're going to have more fresh chicken available on this date. Let us know how many you'd like to reserve.
Nice.
And that worked pretty well for us, on a smaller scale where we were like raising 200 birds or so. We were able to move, 70, 80, 90 chickens through that channel. And then I kind of function stacked. So on the way home from the butcher, I had to drive around Indianapolis and kind of through the south side of Indy. So I reached out to some restaurants and picked up some orders that way where I could, drop off 20 chickens here, 10 chickens there, stuff like that. So that was my focus initially. But once we got into 2010, we'd begun dabbling in farmers markets in 2009. I did about a half of a season at a weekday market in downtown Indy, on Wednesday mornings, and that was really good. That gave me a lot of experience and taught me a lot about how to set up my stand and displays and just interact with people in a retail setting. And in 2010, we went full tilt bore into farmers markets just to push more product out there. Nice.
So how many acres are you up to now? Because you do what? Turkeys, chicken, pork, and beef. Did I cover all of that?
Yep. We're still doing pastured poultry, which is, the broilers, and then we just do turkeys for Thanksgiving. We also do forest raised pork. And both of those guys we're feeding non-GMO grain. And then, we also have a herd of cattle. We started with 4 cows, in 2010. And this year we actually maxed out at about 42 cows. So we've reinvested very, very aggressively, have lived on less than we could to put money back into the beef enterprise, because long term, that's really what we want to focus on, just because of how regenerative cattle are. I mean, my personal opinion is that, 100% grass-fed beef, which is what we do, no grain, is the most sustainable regenerative food we can raise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it builds soil, it repairs soil. It's so nutrient dense and so healthy for us to eat. That's really what we're focusing on. So this year, 2017, total, we're using about 55 acres. 15 acres of that is now in chemical-free hay. We're producing our own hay on farm instead of buying that from off farm. And we've got about roughly 35 grazing acres. Nice. For the cattle. We also have the poultry out there, and then we're still using roughly 5 acres out in the woods, for the pigs.
So I'm assuming that you do rotational grazing with them?
Yeah, the cows get moved every 24 hours. Nice. It's a very rare occurrence when they don't get moved every day. And, sometimes we might have like a slightly bigger paddock just because of, how the fence falls. So they might be in there for a day and a half or 2 days, but yeah, it is a true rotational grazing system, a high stocking density per acre. And it's been pretty interesting, seeing what you can do with that. And one of my mentors, is Greg Judy. And, something he talks about and something we've witnessed is, in time as you build soil, you start growing so much grass that you have to go get more cows to keep up with the grass on the same acreage. And we've seen that, here where we've been able to increase our stocking density, not quite double in the last 3 to 4 years, but, about, 70-75%, we've increased our stocking density on the same acreage. And, something Greg says is that, it's like, almost like getting another farm for free. And that's absolutely true.
Yeah. And that's kind of what my husband talks about as well, is like, he's a soil builder first, because we do rotational grazing lamb, at our farm. So, kind of in the same realm here, and we eat that ourselves. We don't sell it off of the farm, but it's really awesome that you guys do that, because we're always seeking other people that do 100% grass-fed beef, not only for like clients that we have, but restaurants and stuff like that. So maybe he can talk to you later about that. One of the other things I wanted to ask you that a lot of people probably don't know about is you kind of talk about authentic food on your website. Can you explain what that means to you and how people can seek that?
Yeah, so basically, we kind of coined that phrase years ago to try and define what it was we were doing on our farm. And that really came about because of an interaction with the USDA organic compliance office. We were at the insistence and advice of particularly Elliot Coleman, using the term organically raised on our marketing. And I know that's something that several other producers have used as well, to basically try and signify that we're doing things with organic practices, but we were very clear that our products were not USDA organic certified. And to this day, they are not. And to this day, I really don't have any ambitions to get, certified organic. Something that Joel says is that, he doesn't want to stoop, down to those lower standards. And I feel the same way. So, we basically got a slap on the wrist, and, they said, well, you can't say that. Right. You can't say that, you're organically raised, because that means you're equivalent to us. And basically the conversation, in a nutshell, ended with me saying, well, really, we're better than you. Can we say we're better than you? And they said, yeah, absolutely. So we started using the term, authentic food to, define like how we go above and beyond organic standards. Right. And just to get people to understand that, just because it says it's organic doesn't necessarily mean that it's